It's that time of year again. Sports ball season is approaching its climax, and custom dictates that we get together and eat while watching. I'm not really into football, or as the Brits call it, handsy soccer. I think. But I can get behind any reason to eat this buffalo chicken dip we're going to make today. So before a shot clock violation gets called on us,
let's get started.
The first thing we're going to do is prep our chicken. We've got 3 pounds of boneless, skinless chicken breast here, but we're only going to use about 1 pound to 1.5 pounds for this recipe. You can use more or less depending on your preferred chicken to dip ratio. All we're going to do is take a few breast and place a cut horizontally through the center of each. Next, we'll take the halves we just made and cut them into strips lengthwise. Once we've cut all the halves into strips, we'll take a handful of strips at a time, give them a 90-degree turn, and cut across the whole bunch until we have a mountain of little chicken cubes. You can dice as finely as you like here. Just remember that the chicken will shrink as it cooks. If you'd like bigger pieces in the final product, don't dice too finely. If you decide you'd like smaller pieces later, you can always dice the chicken finer after it bakes. Once we've diced all our chicken, we'll transfer it into a baking dish for seasoning. Using the same dish to bake and season will save us from washing an extra mixing bowl. Before we season, we'll hit the chicken with a bit of oil to help everything stick. Any oil will work, but something with a neutral flavor like canola or grapeseed oil will work best. Next, we'll season to taste with salt, pepper, and some crushed red pepper. I usually add a few healthy shakes of both garlic and onion powder, but simply forgot while filming this. Highly recommend both of those though. Once all the spices are in there, just go ahead and mix everything up with your hands until the spices are distributed. Next, we'll stick our chicken in a 350-degree oven and bake to at least 155 Fahrenheit before pulling it out and allowing it to rest up to 165 Fahrenheit. While your chicken is cooking, grab yourself a measuring cup and your sauces. For this dish, we're using a chunky blue cheese dressing and Frank's Red Hot, a classic for any buffalo application. Go ahead and measure out 1 to 1.5 cups of hot sauce, depending on how hot you like it. I like to really taste the hot sauce, so I go for more. Then add 1/2 cup of blue cheese dressing straight into the same cup. Stop adding dressing when your total volume of liquid in the measuring cup has increased by 1/2 cup. Once that's done, we'll set our sauces aside and focus on the cheeses for this dish. We're using 16 ounces of full-fat cream cheese and 16 ounces of full-fat Monterey Jack cheese. To start, we're going to unwrap our block of Monterey Jack cheese and immediately cut off 1/3 to set aside. This will be used later to top the entire dish. With the remaining Monterey Jack, we're going to make slices, like so. Then we'll cut the slices into strips and set them aside. Can't stress full fat enough here. You could use reduced fat alternatives. I have, and it more or less works, but the fat really binds everything together. Next, place your cream cheese in a large 9 to 12 inch nonstick pot or high-sided skillet set over medium-low heat. I'm using a pot here. Let that sit on the heat for a minute to get warm, then take your spatula and start breaking it apart. We're trying to break the blocks of cream cheese down into smaller chunks inside the pot so that they will melt faster. Our end goal is to melt the cream cheese into a smooth, pliable, homogeneous blob. This will take some time, and you'll need to scrape the sides and bottom of the pot constantly to avoid any burning. Don't worry if you see it sticking a bit. The fat makes this stuff very forgiving. Just run your spatula over any area where the cheese is sticking to the surface until you can see the middle of the pot again. Keep breaking up the blocks and scraping the sides until you have something that looks like this. When there are no more chunks of unmelted cheese, we're ready to add our Monterey Jack strips. It's best to add these a couple of handfuls at a time. If we add all the Monterey Jack cheese at the same time, it will be difficult to melt, so be sure to add it in batches. Use your spatula to combine as you add each batch, still periodically running it along every surface of the pot to prevent burning. Once all the Monterey Jack strips are melted, and your cheese mixture looks sort of like taffy, we're ready to add the sauces we measured out earlier. Add all your sauce straight into the pot of hot cheese and stir to combine. Be sure to work your spatula around every surface of the pot to thoroughly incorporate the sauce and cheese. You don't want to see any streaks of white cheese or red hot sauce. You'll know you're done when the whole thing is this beautiful buffalo orange. Our final step at this stage is to add and combine our cooked and rested chicken with the buffalo cheese mix. As I mentioned earlier, you can make your chicken chunks smaller if you still think they're too large after baking. Simply remove your chicken from the baking dish onto a cutting board and run your knife through it until the pieces are to your liking. I like my chunks of chicken chunkier, so I broke apart the chicken in my baking dish with a slotted spoon and transferred it into the cheese mixture, then stirred to combine. One final note here. If you've evaporated too much moisture from the cheese because you were, say, trying to film a video and you let it cook too long, you can take a bit of that broth your chicken let off and add it to the mix to loosen everything back up. Not enough liquid in the dip can cause the final product to get a bit crumbly as it cools. In retrospect, I would have done that. At this stage, you want the dip to be a bit looser than whatever you would like the final product to be, since it's going to lose moisture during its final bake and tighten up as it cools. Once the consistency is where you like it, we're going to grab a 9x13 inch baking dish and transfer our buffalo chicken dip into it. Once that's all in there, and you've made sure to scrape down every square inch of the pot so as not to lose any of that cheesy buffalo chickeny goodness, you'll want to smooth the mixture out into a nice even layer that reaches every corner of the dish. The last thing we'll do before our final bake is top the whole dish with the Monterey Jack cheese we set aside earlier. Take the reserved cheese and grate it over the top of the dish. You can move around as you grate, or grate it all into the middle, then spread the pile of cheese out to the edges with your hands, like a godless heathen. Either way works. This cheese is going to melt and go brown and slightly crispy, providing a nice textural contrast to the creamy dip once the whole thing is baked. Now, into a 425-degree oven the dish goes to bake until that layer of cheese on top is nice and golden brown and bubbling. That usually takes about 15 to 20 minutes, but it's totally dependent on your oven. Just check your dip periodically and give it a turn every now and then to ensure even browning, since all ovens have hot and cold spots. When it's brown to your liking, pull it out. Here's mine. Once you pull that out of the oven, all that's left to do is garnish. Here we're using some more of that Frank's hot sauce, which I'll splash over in a diagonal pattern. Some crumbled blue cheese, same stuff that's in the dressing we used. Some bacon bits I made from leftover bacon I had for breakfast. And finally, some finely chopped scallions for a little more onion flavor. And with that, we're done! Take a second and marvel at this pretty little thing before serving it up with the obligatory carrot and celery stick combo. Also grab some tortilla chips. I'm using these blue corn chips that you can find at any grocery store. The purple color adds a cool contrast to the orange dip. Now, grab yourself a stick for dipping and dig into your dip that's definitely still hot, unlike mine, and enjoy this spicy, savory offering to the sports ball gods with some friends as you cheer your favorite team on to victory.